Let's be real. If you've been hammering your bench press, incline dumbbell press, and dips thinking you've covered all your triceps needs, you're not totally wrong. But you're leaving gains on the table if you're not focusing on the long head of your triceps. Here's the truth. You don't need to worry about extra work for your medial and lateral heads. The research says they're already getting all the love they need during your pressing movements. Studies using EMG or electromyography have shown that pressing exercises, like the bench press or dips, fully recruit the medial and lateral heads. So, if you're still adding in isolation exercises for these heads after pressing, you're essentially hitting the same muscles again, which leads to diminishing returns. What you should be doing is focusing your efforts on the long head, the part of the triceps that doesn't get worked nearly as much during your typical push day. The long head is the largest of the three tricep heads, and it plays a huge role in overall arm size and strength. It's also a bit unique because it crosses both the shoulder and elbow joints. This means you need to take a different approach to target it effectively. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how you can grow your long head, why it's the most important part of the triceps for adding real arm mass, and the key exercises you need to focus on. And don't forget to follow for more science-based lifting tips to take your training to the next level. Let's start with why you don't need to isolate the medial and lateral heads of the triceps. As I mentioned earlier, EMG studies show that during your typical pressing movements, like the bench press, incline dumbbell press, and dips, the medial and lateral heads are fully engaged. Their job is to extend the elbow and stabilize the arm, which means they're doing most of the work during any pressing exercise. The data is clear. When you're hitting these movements, your medial and lateral heads are firing on all cylinders. So, doing extra isolation work for these heads is like trying to fill a glass that's already full. Instead of piling on more work for these heads, focus your energy on the long head, which doesn't get nearly as much attention during your chest and shoulder workouts. So, how do you grow the long head? The key is to target it with movements where your arms are placed overhead. Unlike the medial and lateral heads, the long head of the triceps is fully stretched when your arms are overhead, which engages it more fully. Exercises like overhead triceps extensions, whether you're using dumbbells, cables, or even doing incline skull crushers, are ideal for this. The reason these work so well is because they put the long head in a deep stretch, which is critical for maximizing growth, and that brings us to stretch-mediated hypertrophy. This is a game changer for muscle growth, especially for muscles like the triceps. When a muscle is stretched under load, it creates mechanical tension, which is one of the main drivers of hypertrophy. Research shows that muscles subjected to a deep stretch during loaded exercises, like the long head during overhead triceps extensions or incline skull crushes, experience greater muscle protein synthesis and fiber growth compared to muscles working through a shorter range of motion. This is because the long head has to work harder during the concentric lifting phase to bring the arm back up from that stretched position. Essentially, stretching your muscles under load triggers something called sarcomerogenesis, which is the formation of new sarcomeres, the basic building blocks of muscle fibers. When you increase the number of sarcomeres in a muscle, you give it more capacity to grow and handle tension over time. So, by targeting the long head with overhead movements, you're maximizing your potential for triceps growth. To make the most out of your long head training, you want to focus on controlled, full range of motion reps that really stretch the muscle at the bottom. Overhead cable triceps extensions are great because they maintain constant tension throughout the movement. The same goes for dumbbell overhead extensions and incline skull crushers. The key is to keep the muscle under tension for as long as possible. And don't forget about progressive overload. As with any muscle group, you need to gradually increase the weight or the number of reps you're doing to continue making gains. But remember, form is everything. Make sure you're getting that full stretch and hitting the long head where it counts. To sum it up, you're already working the medial and lateral heads of your triceps through your pressing movements, so there's no need to add extra isolation work for them. Instead, make the long head your priority by focusing on overhead exercises like triceps extensions and incline skull crushes. By doing this, you'll tap into stretch-mediated hypertrophy and maximize your triceps growth. If you want to see real gains in your triceps and add serious size to your arms, stop overtraining the medial and lateral heads and shift your focus to the long head. Trust me, this small tweak to your routine can lead to some serious gains. And if you want more science-based lifting advice, don't forget to hit that follow button and stay tuned for more ways to level up your training.